What happens when the owner of a 20-location fine dining chain gets denied a table at his own restaurant and is told, "You're not our kind of customer"? Jared Ellis built his restaurant brand from a single food truck in a dusty parking lot outside Phoenix. He grilled through triple-digit summers, scrubbed down his own fryers, slept in his van more nights than he'd admit. After 15 years, his upscale American bistro concept had grown to 20 locations across 5 states. But lately, something felt off. He'd been getting vague reports about the Scottsdale location oddly low customer return rates, a few one-star online reviews mentioning weird vibes at the front, and one cryptic email from a former hostess that said, "Some people you trust shouldn't be in charge." Jared didn't like secondhand stories. He wanted the truth. He shaved the beard, swapped his usual tailored shirts for a faded tee, jeans, and old sneakers. His assistant booked him a reservation under J. Erickson, a name no one at that location had ever heard. Jared hadn't personally met any of the Scottsdale team. It was a newer store, opened during the pandemic, and handled almost entirely by his district manager, Carla. She'd insisted everything was solid. On a warm Friday evening, Jared pulled up to the sleek, glass-fronted bistro. It was busy patio full, valet running back and forth. He stepped inside. The hostess podium sat right in front. Behind it stood a sharply dressed young man, early 20s, dark blazer over a turtleneck, hair gelled perfectly. He was talking to a couple, laughing. Jared waited patiently. After a moment, the host turned to him. "Name? J. Erickson. I had a reservation for 7 p.m. The host tapped the tablet, brows furrowing. Don't see that name." Jared leaned in slightly. "I got an email confirmation. I can show you if." The host cut him off. "No need. We're fully booked." Jared looked behind the guy. "That two-top by the window's open." "It's reserved," the host replied, voice tight. Jared hesitated. "Look, I don't mind waiting, but I was hoping to just grab a quick dinner." "If something opens," the host snapped. "Sir, you don't really fit the atmosphere we try to provide here." Jared blinked. "I'm sorry." The host glanced him up and down, faded shirt, sneakers. "You're not our kind of customer." Jared froze. His stomach dropped. The words hung there, cold and sharp. Couple behind him heard it. The woman frowned. Jared turned slightly, stunned. The host didn't flinch. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave now," the host said. "We have standards." Jared's throat went dry. He stared at the young man for a long second, heart pounding. He hadn't expected this. Not even close. He stepped back outside. The warm night air hit him hard. He sat on the curb, trying to process what just happened. He didn't know this host's name, didn't know the manager on duty. But tonight, he got his answer. He wasn't going to call anyone. He wasn't going to email. He was going in. The next day, Jared returned in full disguise. Black slacks, button-up shirt, clean shave, a fake resume in hand. His assistant had helped him apply through a staffing agency under the name Jason Edgar, a new trainee for front of house. The district manager, Carla, had approved the hire without blinking. They needed help, she said. High turnover at the Scottsdale spot. The usual. He was scheduled for a Saturday evening shift, training under the same host. At 5:30 sharp, Jared stood in the back hallway, tying an apron, as the man who denied him a table the night before strolled in sipping a soda. "Name's Trevor," he said casually, not even looking up. "I guess I'm training you tonight. Try not to screw anything up." Jared gave a short nod. "Jason, nice to meet you." Trevor didn't recognize him. Not with the new clothes, the shaved face, the fake glasses. Not after tossing him out like trash the night before. The night was chaos. Trevor barked at staff, flirted with female guests, and ignored anyone who didn't look like they had money. Every time someone walked in with a t-shirt or didn't have a reservation, he'd roll his eyes. "Nope, nope, nope," he'd mutter. "Not our type." Jared felt his jaw tighten. But not everyone was like Trevor. A server named Carmen, mid-30s, sharp eyes, tired but kind, pulled Jared aside after his first hour. "Don't let him get to you," she said quietly. "He's the GM's nephew. Thinks he owns the place." Jared kept his voice calm. "Does he always turn people away like that?" Carmen gave a sad smile. "Only if they don't look rich. I've seen him reject soldiers in uniform. A couple with a disabled kid. Said they'd ruin the vibe. Management lets him do whatever. It's messed up." Jared nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me." That night he stayed until close. Watched Trevor pocket cash tips that weren't his. Watched him mock a dishwasher with a stutter. Watched him turn away 3 walk-ins who looked like they couldn't afford a bottle of wine. And Jared took notes. He went home past midnight, sat at his kitchen table and stared at the wall. His company, his name, and this was what it had become. He wasn't done. Not yet. By the next shift, Jared had already memorized the entire floor layout and seating chart. He arrived 15 minutes early, just as the prep cooks were finishing their setup. The floor manager, a woman named Dana with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a Bluetooth headset pressed to one ear, barely looked up when he clocked in. "Host stands yours tonight," she said, distracted. "Trevor's late again. Just seat the reservations. Don't freelance." "Got it." Jared nodded. Understood. The dining room wasn't open yet. He walked the floor, noting fingerprints on the wine wall display, crumbs under a booth, and a cracked light bulb above table 11. None of it was catastrophic, but it wasn't the standard he'd built his name on either. Trevor strolled in 7 minutes after opening, sunglasses still on. "Don't touch the tablet," he muttered, brushing past Jared. "You'll mess up the flow." Jared stepped aside, watching him pop open a mint tin and chew one slowly while scanning the crowd starting to form by the host's stand. His posture shifted the moment a man in a designer blazer approached. "Welcome back, Mr. Langston," Trevor said, voice suddenly polished. "We have your corner table ready." Jared greeted the couple behind them, a woman in her 60s with her daughter. "Hi, do you have a reservation?" he asked gently. "We don't, but we were hoping to grab a quick bite. We're just in from the airport," the older woman said, smiling. Before Jared could reply, Trevor leaned in. "Sorry, we're full. Next time, definitely call ahead." The daughter glanced at the half-empty dining room. "It looks like there's space?" "That's for people who planned," Trevor said, tone clipped. "Have a good night." They left quietly. Jared turned to follow, but Trevor had already turned back to the tablet. "Don't get involved," he said low. "You'll learn. Some people just don't match the feel here. We're not a diner." Jared said nothing. By 8 o'clock, the dining room was full. The kitchen buzzed. The bar backed up. And Trevor? He was scrolling on his phone. Jared had seen enough. He walked to the bar, where Carmen was filling a drink order. She looked tired but calm, moving fast. "Who's the highest-ranking manager here tonight?" he asked. "Technically Dana," she said, pouring soda water. "But she's been glued to the office since 5, avoiding the floor." "You trust her?" Carmen hesitated. "She's not mean, just doesn't push back when things go wrong." "Who does?" Carmen looked over at the dish pit. A tall man in a stained apron was wiping sweat from his brow. "Luis. He's been here since opening. Keeps the kitchen from falling apart." Jared walked back to the host stand. Trevor was now leaning against the wall, chatting with a server, laughing. "Going to take a 5, Trevor said without looking at him. "Cover me." Jared nodded. As Trevor disappeared down the hallway toward the staff exit, Jared turned back to the tablet. A group of 3 walked in, a young couple with a boy in a scout uniform. The man looked around, unsure. "Hi, we don't have a reservation," he said. "But we heard this place was special. Thought we'd try our luck." Jared glanced at the chart. Table 15 had just cleared. "I can seat you right now," he said. "If you're okay with a booth?" The boy grinned. "Yes, please." He brought them over, handed them menus, and poured waters himself. As he walked back, Dana finally emerged from the office, headset still on. "Did you just seat someone without a reservation?" she asked, brow raised. They were polite. There was space. "Table 15 was unassigned," Jared said calmly. "That's not the policy. The policy is to fill seats with paying customers, right?" She looked at him for a moment, then turned and walked off without replying. Trevor returned 5 minutes later, chewing gum. "Anything happen?" "Table 15. Walk-ins." "I sat them." Trevor's jaw tightened. "You can't do that. They'll lower the spend average." They ordered a bottle of wine and 2 entrees already. Trevor didn't respond. He walked over to the table to peek at their order. Jared watched him circle back, annoyed. "You got lucky," he muttered. "Don't do it again." That night, after close, Jared stayed behind. Carmen was cleaning silverware. Luis was breaking down boxes by the back door. Jared approached him. "You've been here a while?" Luis nodded. "Since the first week." "You like it here?" Luis looked up. "Used to. Now, it's complicated." "How so?" He paused. "Staff keeps quitting. Front of house blames the kitchen whenever a guest complains, even when it's not us. And Trevor, he doesn't respect anyone who works with their hands. If you're not wearing a blazer, he acts like you don't exist." Jared leaned against the wall. "Has anyone filed a complaint?" Luis gave a dry laugh. "To who?" "Dana's checked out. Carla visits maybe once a month. And Trevor tells everyone he's family. Untouchable." Jared's stomach turned. "What about tips? Are they pooled?" "They're supposed to be. But sometimes Trevor takes the host cut. Says it's his handling fee for managing the tablet." That was enough. Jared left that night and called a senior HR partner from his personal circle. He gave them the time, date, and instructions. "Show up tomorrow as an independent consultant, unannounced. Observe everything. Talk to staff. Take notes." He'd be there 2-1 last shift. The next evening, Jared arrived early. Carmen was already setting tables. Luis was prepping the dish pit. Dana was in the back office. Trevor hadn't arrived yet. By 6, the dining room was packed again. The HR consultant, posing as a difficult guest, intentionally sent back an appetizer and waited to be approached. Trevor responded by calling her a chronic complainer to the kitchen staff, then ignored her for the rest of the meal. At 7:15, a man in work boots and a polo walked in, a contractor from a nearby site, judging by the dirt on his sleeves. Trevor turned him away without checking the chart. "Try the grill down the street," he said. The man left, confused. 2 minutes later, the HR consultant stood and asked to speak to the general manager. Trevor waved toward Dana, who emerged reluctantly. The conversation happened in whispers. Dana's expression shifted from tired to pale. She looked toward Jared. "Jason," she said, "can I speak with you in the office?" Jared followed her back. The HR rep was already there, seated calmly at the desk. Dana looked rattled. "She says there's been discrimination and tip skimming." Jared took a breath. "There has. I saw it. Repeatedly." The HR consultant nodded, then looked at him. "You ready?" Jared nodded. He stepped back into the dining room. Trevor was leaning against the bar, running his hands through his hair like he owned the place. "Trevor," Jared said, loud enough to quiet the room. "We need to talk." The host turned, annoyed. "What?" "My name's Jared Ellis. I own this restaurant, and 19 others just like it. I came here undercover because I heard something was wrong. I didn't expect to find someone using my floor as their personal playground." The room went silent. Jared kept his voice steady. "You've turned away guests who didn't look like you wanted them here. You've stolen tips. You've harassed staff. It ends now." Trevor's face drained of color. "Wait, what? You're done. Effective immediately." Dana stepped forward, lips pressed tight. She didn't argue. Jared turned to the staff. "This place has been running on the backs of people like Luis, like Carmen, people working twice as hard to fix problems they didn't create. That changes tonight." He paused. "We'll be closed tomorrow. Paid day off. The next day we reopen with new policies, new oversight, and new leadership. And if any of you are ready to step up, I'm ready to listen." No one spoke. Then Luis gave a quiet nod. And Carmen, for the first time in 3 days, smiled. 2 days after the floor shut down, the Scottsdale location reopened under new conditions. The morning began with a closed-door meeting in the dining room. No guests, no music, just the staff gathered at the bar area, tension sitting thick in the air. Jared stood at the center, sleeves rolled, no clipboard, no assistant, no pretense. "I know this isn't how you expected your week to go," he began, "but I'm not asking for your trust because of my title. I'm asking for your attention because this place can and will run differently." He turned toward Luis, who stood by the service station, arms crossed. "I've asked Luis to help lead the transition. Starting today, he'll be the acting floor supervisor. He's earned that through consistency, not seniority." Luis didn't nod or smile. He just stood still, absorbing the weight of it. Jared continued. "For the next month, we're restructuring tip distribution. No more host control over the pool. It'll be transparent and handled through payroll." Dana, seated near the back, looked down at her shoes. She hadn't spoken since the night of the reveal, and she hadn't been asked to. Jared had already discussed her role privately with HR present. She'd be retained in an administrative support role but removed from floor oversight. She accepted the change without protest. Carmen raised her hand, hesitant. "What about hiring?" she asked. "We've been short 2 servers for weeks. And the dish pit's been running 1 man down since January." "I know," Jared said. "That's on me. Corporate slowed approvals without understanding what you were up against. That changes today. I've authorized immediate hiring. You'll get to interview candidates yourselves. I trust you more than a resume filter." Carmen lowered her hand, eyes heavy but hopeful. Jared looked around the room. "I'm not here to micromanage," he said, "but I will be here, regularly, not as a surprise, not in disguise. You'll see me, and I'll see you." He paused just long enough to let the silence settle. "Now let's clean the slate. You all deserve that." That afternoon, they reopened with a scaled-back lunch menu to reduce strain. Jared stayed on site, helping bus tables, shadowing Luis, and quietly observing how the team moved when no one was breathing down their necks. Without Trevor monopolizing the front, the tone shifted. Luis coordinated calmly from the pass, delegating without barking. He kept the back moving without rushing prep. Carmen, no longer stiff and guarded, worked her section with ease and took time to help a new runner navigate the POS system. At the host stand, a young woman named Paige, newly reassigned from another location, greeted guests with warmth but without the forced polish Trevor had insisted on. When a family walked in with a stroller and no reservation, she didn't hesitate. "We'll find something for you," she said, and waved over Jared to confirm. He nodded once, and she seated them near the windows. Later, While refilling water at table 6, Jared caught a quiet conversation between two line cooks near the expo counter. "Did you hear about the guy they fired?" one asked. "The one who used to run the front?" "Yeah," said the other. "Didn't even know he was related to anyone. Just thought he was some rich kid who hated everyone. Apparently he told someone wearing a uniform they weren't welcome." The second cook shook his head. "That's not just bad service. That's poison." Jared didn't interrupt. He just kept pouring. By 3 o'clock, the last lunch guests had left. Staff began breaking down stations. Jared gathered a few of them near the bar to check in. "Anything not working?" he asked. A server named Jalen leaned against a stool. "Honestly, it's smoother without someone breathing down our necks. But the tablet's still a mess. The seating logic's off. It double books booths." Luis nodded. "Trevor used to override it constantly. Now it's just buggy." "I'll have IT reset it tonight," Jared said. "Until then, manage it manually. Paper chart. You trust your eyes more than software." Jalen grinned. "Old school. I like it." As the dinner shift approached, Dana entered the room carrying a small envelope. She approached Jared slowly. "I wanted to hand this to you directly," she said, voice low. He opened the envelope. Inside was a worn index card and a folded memo. The card was a guest comment, dated 2 months earlier, describing an incident where a walk-in couple had been told the kitchen was out of ingredients, despite the restaurant being half empty. The memo was from Dana to Carla, time-stamped the next day. It reported guest complaints about front-of-house discrimination and requested a review. Jared read it twice. "You documented this," he said. "And it was ignored." Dana nodded. "I should have escalated. But I knew Carla wouldn't do anything. I didn't want to risk my job. You shouldn't have had to choose between doing the right thing and keeping your paycheck." He handed the envelope back. "Thank you for showing me." Dana didn't respond. She turned and walked toward the back, her posture straighter than it had been in days. By evening, a rhythm had returned. The dining room filled, but the tension didn't. Guests lingered longer. Staff moved smoother. And Paige, now in sync with the servers, rotated tables without overloading any section. Jared watched from the corner of the bar as Carmen approached him between turns. "Feels different," she said. "It is." She looked out toward the floor. "You know, the last time we had a full team meeting, it was to get scolded for not upselling enough cocktails." Jared raised one brow. "Not exactly motivating." "No. But today," she said. "At least now, it feels like someone's listening." He nodded once. "Let's keep it that way." Just before 9, a couple entered no reservation, clearly tired, the man's work shirt dusted with drywall. Paige checked the chart and glanced toward Jared. He didn't say a word, just nodded. She smiled, turned back to the couple, and gestured to a table near the fireplace. They followed her, grateful. Jared stepped into the back hallway, leaned against the wall near dry storage, and exhaled. Change wasn't instant. It never was. But it had started. And this time it was happening in the open. By the end of the week, Jared had returned to Phoenix, but his presence in Scottsdale didn't disappear. He'd left behind a clear structure: daily check-ins with Luis, weekly reports routed directly to HR and himself, and a newly appointed regional support manager named Elaine, brought in from the Denver location. She was calm, methodical, and had a reputation for rebuilding fractured teams without theatrics. She'd be on site 4 days a week until further notice. That following Monday, Carmen stayed after her shift to meet with Elaine in the back dining area. One of the bussers had offered to finish her side work so she wouldn't miss the meeting. Carmen had never had that happen before. Elaine sat at a small corner table, reviewing a printed staffing chart. "You've been here since what, last fall?" Elaine asked, not looking up. September. I transferred from Tempe. Elaine nodded and finally looked at her. You applied for the assistant FOH lead role. I've read your file. Solid record. No write-ups, strong guest feedback, veteran at 3 locations. Why haven't you moved up already? Carmen hesitated, then answered plainly. Because I don't speak over people. I just do my job. Elaine placed the folder down. You're not going to have to yell to be heard anymore. But you will have to speak up. Carmen met her gaze. I can do that. Elaine tapped the folder once, then stood. Then you've got a trial run starting next week. You'll work directly with Luis, rotate on floor coverage, and handle opening 1 day a week. If it goes well, we formalize it. Carmen didn't smile. She simply nodded, the kind of nod that carried weight. She hadn't been asked to perform loyalty just to lead. Down in the kitchen, Luis had started reorganizing the prep station layouts. For months, the cold line had been sharing space with dry storage overflow, forcing runners to cross each other mid-shift. He spent the early part of the day with the new porter and line cook, measuring clearance and shifting shelving. It wasn't glamorous, but it shaved minutes off every transition during dinner service. Mid-shift, Jared called in. Elaine put him on speakerphone during the department lead meeting. Any pushback? He asked. Luis answered first. No. People are just waiting to see if this sticks. They've been promised change before. Elaine cut in. It's going to stick. But it has to be earned, not announced. Jared stayed quiet for a beat, then said, That's exactly right. Any immediate needs? Luis hesitated. 1. We've got a vendor issue. Produced delivery's been showing up late and missing items. It's been happening for 3 weeks. Elaine noted it. I'll escalate that myself. You shouldn't be adjusting the menu last minute because someone can't ship lettuce. In the front office, Dana had been quietly transitioning into her new role. She no longer oversaw floor operations, but she managed scheduling, payroll input, and vendor coordination. For the first time in months, her work didn't leave her breathless. She took her lunch break in the back hallway, eating a sandwich slowly instead of rushing it between double-checking covers. Jared hadn't removed her, but she now understood why her authority had been capped. She'd let too many things slide and convinced herself they weren't hers to fix. That wouldn't happen again. Later that evening, Paige stood at the host stand, flipping through the reservation list. A woman in a denim jacket approached. Hi, I didn't realize we needed a reservation. Is there any chance you've got space for 2? Paige scanned the dining room. Let me check. Yes, we've got a high top near the window. Would you be okay with that? The woman's eyes brightened. Perfect. As Paige walked them over, Carmen passed by with a tray of entrees and gave her a quiet nod. Paige's seating logic had been smooth all night. No bottlenecks, no unnecessary holds. She was adapting quickly, and the staff noticed. Back in the kitchen, Luis overheard one of the new line cooks, a younger guy named Marcus, telling a joke about a dishwasher who got so overwhelmed he tried to rinse silverware with soda water. The older prep cook beside him didn't laugh. Luis approached without raising his voice. We don't do stories that punch down here, he said. If you've got something funny to say, make sure it doesn't come at someone else's expense. Marcus stiffened, then nodded. Understood. Luis didn't linger. He just moved on, wiping his hands. The message landed. By Thursday, Jared had scheduled a meeting at the corporate office with Carla, the district manager who'd allowed the entire situation to fester. She'd been avoiding direct contact since the reveal, but now she had no choice. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a strained smile. Jared, she said, sitting across from him. I was going to reach out once things settled. They're settled now, he replied. Let's talk. She straightened. I know the Scottsdale location had issues, but I've managed 18 other locations without incident. I think it's fair to say this was an isolated breakdown. No, Jared said. It wasn't isolated. It was ignored. You were sent a formal complaint from Dana. You didn't follow up. You let nepotism override performance. You let a toxic employee represent my brand. Her expression faltered. I trusted you to scale culture, not just operations. You didn't, so I'm ending your contract. Effective immediately. She opened her mouth, but Jared raised a hand. This isn't negotiable. You'll receive your severance terms from HR. I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in accountability. She stood, stiffly, and walked out without another word. Back at the restaurant, the tone had changed. The staff didn't hustle out of fear anymore. They moved with purpose. By Friday night, the floor was fully booked. Carmen ran point on the floor chart. Luis monitored the kitchen without snapping, and Paige rotated guests with ease. The new hires were still learning, but they weren't lost. They had guidance. At the end of the shift, Elaine gathered the team for a brief huddle. This week wasn't perfect, she said, but it was honest. And that's a better place to build from than pretending things are fine when they're not. Carmen looked around at the team. No one's walking on eggshells anymore, she said. That makes a difference. Luis added, we didn't need a hero. We needed someone to notice. They all turned to Jared, who had been quietly wiping down the edge of the bar. He looked up. You put your trust in me when I didn't deserve it. That's not lost on me. It won't happen again. The staff dispersed slowly, with no rush to bolt out the door. As the last guest left and the lights dimmed to closing mode, Jared stepped out onto the quiet patio. The air was cool, the streets softly lit. He looked back at the glass facade of the restaurant, the same one he'd been told he didn't belong in. Now, it belonged to the people who did the work. And this time they were seen.